What's up, guys? Hey, it's Shawn Astrom here, and I am super pumped up. The most excited day of my life probably is right now, because I'm going to show you a really cool feature inside of Cinema 4D that is fully supported by Corona Renderer, and that is called the Variation Shader. Some of you may or may not be familiar with that, and also I'm going to show you a little magical plugin called the Reference Shader. So let's take a look at that stuff. Hey guys, so here we are inside of good old Cinema 4D. I'm going to hop into my render settings here, swap it over to Corona. Let's make sure the output resolution is a little lower, and I'm going to bring in a sky object, and let's create a quick light material, and let's bring in this wonderful HDR I've prepared here, and I'm going to throw this onto my sky. And in order to get a nicer preview, I'm going to set the viewport size to 2K. And we can see we get a nice little preview there. Now, I'm going to hide my grid and bring in a camera. Set the focal length to something like 22, a little wider angle. And next, I'm going to bring in a sphere object. Turn on shading, garage shading for the geometry there. And let's set this to hexahedron, I think it's called. I don't know. Segments are pronounced. 32 works. Let's go radius 25. Now, I should probably tell you guys what I'm going to make here real quick, but I want to show you the variation shader that's fully supported inside of Corona, and I also want to show you a magical plugin called the reference shader, as I mentioned. So if we look at my desktop wallpaper here, you can see these cool little river rocks or whatever, and that's what kind of inspired me to do this little tutorial. I thought, let's try and make these with Cinema's built-in noises. And I'm going to use this magical plugin here called the Reference Shader, which you can get off this website here, blackstarsolutions.de. You can see kind of from their little illustrations here that it kind of actually gives us some nodal functionality right within inside of Cinema's layer shading system. So let's take a look at that. So here we are. I got this little sphere, and I'm going to make this editable. This is going to be my rock, and I'm going to scale this down, flatten it out a little. Let's go to the sculpt here, grab my brushes, good old grab brush, and let's scale up my brush. Now you can do this with the bracket keys, which is what I'm doing right now, but you can also go into the attributes and adjust the size of the brush right here. And I'm going to just try and real quickly sculpt some river rocks. Holding down shift to smooth, and we're just going to try and make something. I kind of want this brush a little bigger, you know, some rocks. It's very fun. Task sculpting rocks. So that looks kind of like it could work. Good enough. And let's bring one more over here, and copy of one rather, and let's sculpt this guy a little bit. Shift smoothing that one, and I want them obviously to be slightly different. So I'm just going to do 3 of these. And let's copy that guy, bring it over there, and back to our good old grab. Now obviously you could go in and spend lots of time making some super realistic, nice and detailed rocks just with the sculpting of them, but yeah, rocks are a pretty exciting subject matter. So if I bring in a cloner object and shift select those guys and throw them in there, you can see they're kind of stacked up upon one another. Some pretty sweet looking rocks, if I don't say so myself. And I'm going to just space them out a little less, and let's do render instances and throw a few more in here. So the topic is the variation shader. So I'm going to create a new Corona material, and inside the diffuse channel I'm going to bring in an effect, and it is the variation shader. Now you couldn't see that on my screen, but I promise you it's in there. And if I just hop in here to the variation shader, and I want to actually, well, let's throw it onto the cloner. I'm going to save this. I'm going to fire up the IR, the interactive renderer, they like to call it. And you can see right off the bat that we are getting some random coloration of our stones. And if I hop back into the variation shader, I'm going to just dial that back, which is the random color here, and let's set it to 4%. Very subtle. But what's really great is I can bring as many shaders as I want right inside of the variation shader here. So to start off, I'm just going to create a noise, and I'm going to set it to Luca, one of my faves. And let's scale it up to, I don't know, 250, something like that. And let's start mapping some custom colors on here. Actually, this one I want to be dark and kind of saturated, like a dark brown-ish. And let's go sort of a light tan color here. And if I hop up a level, I can add another one of these guys. Now, before I get ahead of myself, I'm going to set the space of the texture mapping here to world. And that's going to work a little better to ensure that each rock has its own procedural shader map to it. Now, we might run into some issues if we were to try and animate these, but for doing what I'm trying to create here, it's a great solution. So you can see here in the IPR that each one of these rocks has its own unique noise shader mapping, and therefore each one of these looks pretty unique. If I go to my HDR here, I'm just going to crank up the intensity to something like 3 so we get a little better lighting. Ooh, that's looking pretty cool. So back to my material here, I'm going to copy this, copy shader, and let's paste that in there. And I'm going to set this to Naki. I don't know how you pronounce these things. And let's do sort of a gray blue rock with this one. That looks cool. I might increase the contrast a little bit on this guy. And that's looking pretty cool. And let's do one more since we have 3 rocks. Add another one there. And we will go copy and paste. And let's try Stupel. I think that works. Let's go brown here. We'll go kind of a deeper red or something. There we go. Good enough. So all that stuff's working. And the fact that all that works is pretty spectacular. But what's even more exciting is I can bring in the good old reference shader plugin I mentioned, and that is fully supported inside of Corona. So I just go here and enable displacement, and I go to the displacement tab here. I can bring in down here at the bottom a reference shader, and what I can do is I can select my variation shader here and reference that in, just as if I was hooking it up via nodes. So, but we just don't get that awesome visual feedback. I know they're working on a nodal UI for Corona, for Cinema, but that's not available quite yet. Now, if I hop into this guy and set this to, well, I'm going to actually nest this inside of a filter, and we're just going to desaturate this and crank up the contrast just a little bit. And we can see here on our material preview what we're getting there. I'm going to set the max level to 5 and the min to -2, something like that. I'm going to turn that guy off and re-enable it, and it's going to prepare the scene and calculate that displacement there. So you can see that that is working, which is cool, but it's a little intense. So let's lower it to, I don't know, 2 and 2. Let's try that. I'm going to re-enable the IPR here, or the IR. I keep calling it the IPR. Sweet. That is looking pretty good. That's exactly what I want. Now, some of you, if you've used Corona, you may have wondered how to increase the displacement quality if you're new to it. And to do that, we can go into the render settings here, and under the Corona options here under performance, we can lower this setting actually for screen size to say 1. And I'm going to render this to the picture viewer just so you can kind of see what's going on here. Ooh, I was playing around earlier. You can kind of see what I got there. And you can kind of see the displacement gets a heck of a lot more detailed. And it's incredibly fast to calculate. But it does sort of an intelligent calculation for the displacement based on your render resolution, how close the camera is to the geometry, all that good stuff is pretty much built into the way Corona calculates displacement. I'm going to stop that. I'm going to actually set this to 1.5, and let's go -1. Now, what I want to actually do is copy this guy yet again over to this time the reflection channel. And let's just select that. And right inside of the glossiness, I'm going to paste that guy in there. And for this, let's just back off the contrast a little, crank up the gamma. I'm trying to just create a quick glossy map or glossiness map based on our original noise shaders. And I think that's working pretty good. If I go back to my diffuse channel now and were to go into these noise shaders and change the seed, everything is going to propagate and update through the reference shader, that wonderful plugin, and it's all going to work essentially as if we have nodes, but we don't have nodes. We just have this one little magical plugin. So back to our little scene here. I'm going to hit render one more time, and let's see what we get. Ooh, look at that. We're getting some nice glossiness. It's kind of mapped based on those noises, which is cool. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that. I'm going to go to my cloner here and set this to grid array. And I'm going to just bring in a bunch more of these. Let's go 7. I don't know. I don't want to go too crazy. That looks pretty good. But I'm just going to use dynamics to just throw this onto a ground plane. We get a little scene. We can render it. And it's just going to be super exciting. So here is a plane. I'm going to lower this to 1500 here. Let's add in a bunch more geometry. I'm actually hide this. And let's bring in a good old displacer. Throw that as a child of my plane. Under shading here, let's grab the noise. The good old noise. I'm going to grab Wavy Turbulence for this guy. And let's set this to 2000. Why not? Change the seed. I always just got to change the seed. And let's say 2500. Looks better. And under this guy, let's increase the height. Yeah, sure. I still want more. I want this larger. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So let's turn back on the cloner. And let's lower it a hair. Oops, not with those. Just gonna bring it right there. And let's throw on a good old rigid body tag here. Let's set it to off. Under collision, collision, I want to set the shape to static mesh. So it's looking at this stuff here. And sorry, this is meant to go on the ground. And we'll copy that back over here. We'll set individual elements to all, so it will look at all the clones. And let's set the dynamics to on. And let's go ahead and hit the play button and see what we get here. And we get nothing. And I think that's because we had this shape set to static mesh, because it's not static. We want these to move. So I switch that back to automatic. And let's go ahead and hit the play button and see what we get. Now all of our nice river rocks are falling onto the ground. That's looking awesome. So that's looking good enough that I'm just going to cache that real quick. So let's bake that out. Gotta love baking 3D objects. It's a very fun thing to do. And come on now. Okay, here we go. Boom, look at that. That is exactly what I was going for. So that looks pretty cool. And let's zoom in here. And let's do one more quick Corona render here. And let's see how this thing looks. Preparing scene data, computing GI, rendering the first initial pass. That's looking pretty cool. So yeah, obviously, you guys, we could spend a lot of time finessing those rock shaders and really getting things to look awesome. But I really just wanted to mainly show you guys that all this stuff is fully supported with inside of Corona, and it just works. And it's just awesome that they've done such a good job supporting all of Cinema's amazing built-in native features. So let's see what this little guy looks like. Calculating. Ooh, that's looking pretty cool. And of course, we could throw in some water. Let's do that real quick. Why not? Let's see what we got here. Now I'm going to just do some quick still water. Very rough. But maybe I can, on the fly here, try and create a quick water shader. So there's sort of my body of water. And if I go here to create a new material, let's turn off diffuse, reflection, refraction. And under refraction, let's get crazy here. Let's turn on volumetrics, and let's just throw in some random colors here. We're not going to get too precise here. See if I can't get some sort of a muddy looking water going on, or some, yeah, look at that. Ooh, that's looking good. Yeah, so, and I don't know if I mentioned that the volumetrics inside of Corona in any of my previous tutorials are bonkers amazing, super fast to calculate, look better than any other engine, in my opinion. But yeah, so I hope you guys really dug this one. As I said, continue to hope to do more of these. And yeah, I'm going to just let this resolve. It's looking pretty dang cool, actually. I'm going to just readjust my camera. And let's crank up the resolution here. 1280. And let's do one more. And let this guy render here. But yeah, sorry, I was MIA there for about a week and a half. I had to rebuild my computer. I had a motherboard go bad. And I'm back in action here, and my machine is actually running faster than before. And if some of you guys want, I'd be happy to go through the computer parts that I have and just explain kind of what you can do to kind of get the best of both worlds in terms of GPU and CPU rendering. But as you may or may not know, Corona is all CPU based. So yeah, so this is looking pretty good. I can actually go in here to the post processor right inside of Corona, and sorry guys, I'm just having fun with this, so I'm going to keep going. If I throw in some bloom and glare, crank this up to 50, and start to get some nice little blooming going on here while it's rendering. Let's crank it up to 150. Let's see what we get here. Ooh, that's looking good. And we also have the glare intensity, and this is kind of can give us those little bursts of light. And ooh, that's totally overkill, but it works. If we were going for that effect there. But yeah, anyway guys, I can play around with this stuff for days on end. I'm gonna go ahead and stop this because it's just so much fun. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I will see you again soon.
Brograph.com, an online resource for learning Cinema 4D, After Effects, and other motion graphics tools specifically catered to help you prevail as a motion graphic designer.
What's up, bros? Welcome to another Brograph motion graphics tutorial.
With tutorials, plugins, and now a podcast with tens of thousands of listeners worldwide.
Yeah, it's a great community to be part of.
We give you professional time-saving tips, industry news, interviews, shortcuts, and lessons that help keep you current in the world of motion design.
Throw in HDR Studio, take the render settings, pick the HDR, put in a reflection, and gorgeous.
I love projects that scare me. When our art director comes to us and asks for something that I had never done before, man, it gets me pumped.
Our weekly long-form podcast will give you the latest news, help you in your file management, hardware configuration, and client relations. Learn about the latest render engines, modeling techniques, and workflow integration while staying entertained.
Real nice banana.
Ah, that's so funny. All right. I'm going to live forever.
Our Brograph Talks are a chance to see the way industry leaders from around the globe are changing the face of motion design.
Sometimes you got to make stuff that you're not going to put on your reel, and I'm not here to judge.
The podcasts and talks include people like Beeple, Barton Damer, Nick Campbell, Andrew Kramer, David Ariev, Chad Ashley, Paul Babb, EJ Hassenfrost, Mitch Myers, Chris Schmidt, Jules Urbach, Cornelius Dammert, David Brodeur, Andy Needham, Caitlin Kaju, Zubair Parker, Noseman, Ryan Bean, Casey Hupke, Nick Lyons, Sage, Joey Korenman, Jeremy Cox, Rick Barrett, John Dickinson, Matthias Omatola, Patrick Goski, Brandon Clements, Steve Teeple, Tom Glimpse, Patrick Longstrom, Julia Simone, Devin Coe, Al Heck, and even Deadmau5.
You get that render done. Yeah, you better frame what?
Our Brograph breakdowns go behind the projects and give you an insight on what it's like to manage and maintain your own personal business or work for a large company. Join us for live sessions, check out our useful plugins, watch time-lapse projects, interact with us, and send us email questions and topic ideas. Or just hit the Rando Render button and do an imaginative daily that'll keep you on your toes.
Take all your dreams and let's do it!
Subscribe today and get automatic updates on the latest tutorials, tricks, tips, and inspiration brought to you by industry professionals Dave Koss and Matt Milstead.
We don't care how you get here, folks. Just get here.
Subscribe now to Brograph Tutorials.
It's pretty good, I guess.